Amazing. Miss Peggy. She's got a little bit to talk about today, and we're going to let her say whatever she wants. How's that sound?
I'm very nervous. I'm the speaker in my family. My husband has the corner on that market. When Shannon asked me to tell you what Jesus has done for me, I thought, you know, I'm pretty old and I got a lot I can say. So I'll try to be brief. I was born and reared in Baton Rouge. I was blessed to come from a Christian family. My mother was our Monica at my Baptist church. She was our minister's administrative assistant. We were raised like the preacher's kids. If the doors were open, we were there. We also, I have an older sister and a younger brother. We all got saved at a very young age, and we all were encouraged to develop our own personal prayer life. We all prayed at church, we all prayed in our home, and each of us had a personal prayer life. Now I'm going to fast forward a little bit to when I was a senior in high school. My parents started talking to me about going to college. I had failed to tell them I didn't want to go to college. I wanted to go to beauty school. Now, I think it's called cosmetology now.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, how do I tell them? Because my sister was already in college. And I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to apply to LSU just to appease my parents. So I applied to LSU, and I started praying, Lord, let my parents not make me go. Let my parents know I want to go to beauty school. But that apparently was not his plan for me. Not only did I get in, but I got a little scholarship. And you know, you have to use free money. So I finally told my parents, I really don't want to go, but since I got this little scholarship, it was just for your freshman year, I will go 1 year. And my parents amazingly said, okay, if you will just go 1 year, after that, we'll help you do whatever it is you want to do. So I thought, I can do 1 year. So I completed my first year of college at LSU, and I thought, you know, this college thing is not too bad. I probably could do it, but I wasn't having that wonderful college experience that I had heard so much about. And I wanted to have that college experience. So I talked with my parents and asked them if I could change schools, because I wanted to follow my high school boyfriend to Lafayette. He was going to USL, and he wanted me to come to USL. So I talked with my parents, and they said, well, we'll honor our agreement with you. You went for your year, and we will allow you to change schools. So off I go to UL, promptly embracing that college experience. I learned to dance and smoke and drink and party. Now, I did have my limits. I did not get into drugs or sex. I mean, I had no limits on how much sin I was going to get into. So I just thought, well, you know, I'll just do this college thing and enjoy my time. So I'm going to fast forward to my senior year of college, when I did not want to return to Baton Rouge. I had fallen in love with Lafayette. I had made a lot of friends, not just on the college campus, but in the community. And so I started praying about, Lord, help me find a job that I can buy myself a car and support myself. And you know what? He answered that prayer. I had a college professor that took an interest in me and saw potential and called me into her office one day, pretty soon before we graduated and said, the university has decided to divide freshmen out from the upperclassmen. The new dean of freshman division is looking for an assistant to help him to set up this new college division. Would you be interested? Well, I didn't say yes fast enough, I'm sure. But I did say, how much does it pay? Because that was very important. I wanted that car and that money so I could live in an apartment with my friend. She and I had agreed that we would get jobs and we would stay there in Lafayette. So I start working, and I probably find out that I have to be a responsible adult. You know, I have to get myself up and get myself to work. And I had to use my first paycheck to buy myself a car. I bought me a brand new 1967 Volkswagen Beetle. And that became my first prayer closet, my car. I had Bluetooth with the Lord long before it got cars. I did. So as I was becoming this responsible adult and learning to work a job and keep a schedule and not be a student anymore, I noticed that a lot of my high school and college friends were getting married. And I wanted that same thing for myself. So I started praying for a husband. All of those wonderful adjectives, you know, kind and loving and trustworthy and patient. All of those wonderful adjectives for the husband you want to spend the rest of your life with. Well, God brought that person back into my life, even though we did not have a very favorable first meeting. My first meeting with my to-be husband, my college roommate was getting married, and one of the other bridesmaids asked me if I wanted to ride up with she and her boyfriend, Lynn Aurich. And I said, sure, I'll be happy to do that. They rode in the front, and I rode in the back. Well, I smoked at the time, and I whipped out my trusty lighter and my little cigarette, and my little friend, Lynn Aurich, in the front seat said, I'm sorry, but I don't allow anyone to smoke in my car. I smoke, God. But I said, okay, it's your car, I'll comply. Do you know what? The Lord took care of that. He had me quit shortly after that encounter. Well, not too long after that, my boyfriend and I broke up. He and his girlfriend broke up. And my college roommate and her husband were coming into town. And she said, look, you're not dating anyone. Lynn's not dating anyone. Would you please go together? I want to see you, and my husband wants to see Lynn. And I said, sure, that'll be fine. We'll go just as friends. And that's a great way to start a relationship, as your best friend. And he still is my best friend. Well, about 2 years after we started dating, we decided to get married. And I was so thrilled because the Lord had answered my prayer He possessed so many of those wonderful qualities. Loving, kind, generous. Now, I didn't pray for atheist, but I got that too. Well, I'm going to fast forward again to our married life. We moved around a good bit the first couple of years. We married and moved to Texas for him to work on his master's degree. After that, we moved to Mississippi for him to work on his doctorate. He did need to do an internship when he finished his coursework. So we were trying to get back to Lafayette. We didn't get back to Lafayette, but we did get back to Louisiana. He was offered an internship at the VA hospital in New Orleans. Well, I found a job, we moved to New Orleans, and he completed his internship. Fortunately, He did very well in his internship, and when it came time for him to finish, he was hired at Tulane Medical School in the Department of Psychiatry at a salary where if I wanted to quit work, I could. So we decided, well, we'll start thinking about having some children. We wanted to have at least 2, and we thought, well, you know, he's going to be making enough money, I won't have to work. So we started planning to have a family. During that first year that he was at Tulane Medical School, I did get pregnant. And we promptly found out that we did not want to raise a family in Sin City, because that's what New Orleans is called. And as much as we had enjoyed it, we knew it was not the place to raise our children. We did have 2 children. I was pregnant when we moved to Lafayette while we were, during that first year that he was at Tulane Med School. He started looking for jobs in Lafayette and was hired by a private foundation. We moved to Lafayette, and shortly after moving here, we had our first child, our daughter Susan. And when I tell you shortly after we moved here, I mean shortly. We moved on Saturday. I went into labor on Sunday. I went to the hospital on Monday. And I had a little bitty tiny premature 5-month baby. She did weigh enough to come home from the hospital though, so we were very fortunate with that. About 3.5 years later, we added a son to our family. We had the 2 children that we had always dreamed of. Our daughter Susan is Dr. Susan Aurich. She is a chiropractor in Denton, Texas. Our son is Dr. David Aurich, and he is the Associate Dean at the College of Charleston in Charleston, South Carolina. And I have to say, both of my children know the Lord and do have church homes in their respective cities. Now I'm going to regress again to when they were young. I thought I was just in heaven. I had the 2 children that I'd always dreamed of, and of course they were the cutest kids in the world. But something was missing. And it was that Christian upbringing that I had had. I wanted that for my children. Now, I knew my atheist husband was not going to go with me, but I also knew he was not going to tell me no, that I couldn't take our children. That just wasn't who he was. So I started talking to him about, I'll go to any church you want to go to if you will just go with us occasionally. Well, he said, okay. He thought he could do that, you know, holidays. If the kids were in the Christmas pageant or something like that, he probably could go. But he did not want to go to a Baptist church. He thought the best church for us was a Methodist church, because he had gone there a couple of times when he was a young boy with a friend, and he thought, well, I could probably stand and go to a Methodist church. So the kids and I started attending a Methodist church, and several years after that, I discovered I had a prayer warrior praying with me for the salvation of my husband, and that was my mother. And boy, is she a prayer warrior. Was a prayer warrior, I should say. I wish I could tell you that our prayers were answered quickly. They were not. 15 years after we married, my husband finally got saved and filled with the Holy Ghost. Prayer is powerful. Prayer is powerful. So let's see now. I guess I'm gonna talk now about finding a church, because he decided he wanted to find a church where he could be fed. He was a new Christian, and he just thought the Methodist church just was not feeding him right. And so I said, well, go ahead. You know, you shop around. Remember, I had always told you that I would go to whatever church you wanted to go to, just as long as you would go with me. So he shopped around, and he found First Assembly on South College. And a couple of Sundays later, the kids and I accompanied their dad to church. And he had taken me to a a church where they raise their hands, they worship openly, and they speak in those unknown tongues. And I loved it. I was home. And I have to tell you, those people loved worship. They loved the Lord. Now, 35 years later, I am one of those people. Don't you love it? Now, I'm going to fast forward again to, let me give him a Kleenex, to a time that is a little difficult to talk about. Shannon alluded to it, that she was glad that I'm alive to discuss it. In April of this past year, I got a call from our daughter. She was in the hospital and going to have surgery. She had a liver problem, and they were not sure exactly what was going on. Could I come and be with her? I said, sure. I got my bag packed, and I mean, at daybreak the next morning, I was gone. By the time I got there, she had had her first surgery, and they had found a problem with her liver also, and they had scheduled her for surgery for the next day. And this was Tuesday that I found out, Wednesday that I traveled there, and she was to have her second surgery on Thursday morning. Well, we got up about 6 o'clock, and I took one step toward her bed and promptly fell to the floor, face first, with heart failure. Not a heart attack, heart failure. My heart had stopped and my lungs had collapsed. I spent the next 5 days in cardiac ICU, totally sedated. The first 2 days, I was on a ventilator, and they told my husband they were not sure I was going to make it. The third day, I started breathing on my own. I got to back up a little bit. I told y'all I was going to probably have difficulty with this because I have no memory of this. I'm relying on what my husband and my daughter have told me. When our daughter called her dad, he was to have lunch with Brian Paduzzi that day. He immediately called Brian and told him, I can't go to lunch. Peggy's in Houston with Susan in the hospital. And Brian said, oh, brother, you are not in any shape to drive yourself. So I'll drive you to Houston. Now, is that a brother or what? He immediately called Pastor Joe. Pastor Joe made the same offer. And Lynn said, well, you know, they're not sure she's going to make it. You may need to stay here. I don't know if I'm going to need you here. So Pastor Joe said, okay. He and Shannon were immediately in prayer for us and had an intercessory prayer team praying for both my daughter and me. As I said, I was on the ventilator for the first 2 days. The third day, I started breathing on my own. They took me off of the ventilator. On the 4th day, I was breathing great. And they told my husband, she's gonna make it. Now, I have to say, this church prayed for me. My husband was praying for me and our daughter. Our daughter was praying for me. But this church has such an awesome prayer team. If you ever are hit with hard times, call the Intercessory Prayer Warriors. You talk about a praying church. We have that praying church. When I did fall over face first, God had me in the right place at the right time. If I'd have been anywhere else, I would not have survived. Our daughter immediately started summoning help. Nurses came in from everywhere, and immediately they started on CPR. They did have to use, after about 10 or 12 minutes, they did have to use the electrical paddles to get my heart beating, but it did beat, and I was resuscitated, and fortunately it was before she was taken in for surgery. After I had my 4th day in the ICU, and I was breathing totally on my own, and my husband had been told that, yep, she's gonna make it. I was scheduled for surgery to have a pacemaker and a defibrillator inserted in my chest so that this would never happen again. So as I was coming out from under the anesthesia from the surgery, that's my first memory from the moment that I went to bed Wednesday night. That was 6 days. I had absolutely no clue what had happened. But on that 6th day, I was put into a private room and I got to see my family. What a joyous occasion. Particularly when you find that you didn't know if you were going to make it. You were ever going to see those people again. We had that joyous reunion, and I did find out that during that time, Susan had had not one more surgery, but 2. She had 3 surgeries in 4 days. She also was put on a very strong antibiotic that wreaked havoc on her body. She was put on a bile thinner, and once she got on the bile thinner, her bilirubin started coming down. And the doctor told her dad, she's gonna make it. His 2 gravely ill girls, boy, talk about a happy man, they were gonna make it. So I just wanna say that I can't tell you enough how much prayer has meant to me and in my life, and in praying for our daughter and people praying for us. I want y'all all to know that you people were a big part of that, and that prayers have been answered. Susan and I both are doing well. We are on the road to recovery and are healing. Both of us have been told that it would be about a year before we would be back to normal, whatever normal is. But with God's help, we're slowly but surely getting there. This church prayed for me when I couldn't pray for myself, my husband, my children. You know, a lot of people were praying for me. And I can't thank all of you enough for what all of you did. Pastor Joe and Shannon leaped into action. I was released on day 8. And Pastor Joe had a wheelchair and a walker for me for when I got home. Shannon had gone by our office and put a note on the door saying that there a family emergency, our office would be closed until further notice, and she had started a meal train. Thank you. Thank you. I cannot tell you how much that blessed us. But I do have to tell you about a personal blessing. I got to know Shannon and Laura Clark much, much better. They were the delivery people for my meals. They brought me news of the day. They laughed with me. They told me I looked beautiful when I had a big old purple goose in me, and a big old purple cheek, and a big old bruise on my chin. They cried with me, and they prayed with me. That was my special blessing during that time. If y'all don't know these girls, you need to get to know them. I know that God has a plan for me, or He would not have had me survive. I don't know yet that total plan for my life. I feel like the stronger I get, the more He will reveal. I think this speaking engagement is part of that plan, because like I say, I'm not the speaker in our family. But I do know that prayer is very powerful, and that God has a plan for each of us. Do we always see that plan immediately? I didn't. Do we always hear his prayers answered immediately? I sure didn't. But I do know that the Bible tells us to keep praying. So I want to leave you with this scripture. 1 Thessalonians 5:16-18. Be joyful always. Pray continually. Give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus. Shannon, if you would, come and enter. Please dismiss us in prayer. But I want to thank all of you for coming and for being a part of my life. And anybody have any questions? Everybody always wants to say, how did all of this happen immediately? I don't know. I just know one thing. God had me survive it for a purpose. He had my daughter survive for a purpose. Just find your purpose in the Lord.
What did you do?